Hey everyone, it's Ivan, kitbadger.com, out here for another gear review, and today, talking optics, this little guy right here, which is the Holosun SCS PDP. Broad strokes, what is it? It is a reflex sight for your pistol, and being the PDP, it is made for the PDP. In doing so, they did something pretty cool in that they basically got rid of the adapter plate. So if you're unfamiliar with Walther, when you buy, say, a PDP, you reach back out to them, say, hey, I just purchased this pistol, serial number XYZ. I would like this adapter plate, and whatever adapter plate you want, whether it's acro, like RMR footprint, anything. You say, hey, I would like this adapter plate. They end up sending it out to you. In my experience, that actually takes a while. And it also is one more tolerance to stack. So this completely alleviates that. And on top of that, it actually makes this sit really low. So you can, and it does, basically end up co-witnessing your iron sights already on your pistol with the dot inside this reflex sight. Pretty neat. There's some really cool things Holosun actually did with the SCS. Solar charging sight, pretty sure that's what it stands for. Could be totally wrong, happens. But there's a solar cell. So I'll show you a close-up in a minute, but basically the solar cell on top, immediately when there is light, it starts charging the internal battery. And that internal battery is good for like 20,000 hours of use, which is pretty significant. In addition to that, it monitors for light around, i.e. not behind you, which a lot of sites have done, or straight up. And so where that runs into problems is you pull this out at night, trying to identify your target with your weapon mounted light. Unpopular opinion in some circles, talking about you, Wilson Combat. And you press the light so you can identify that target. And in doing so, you now have a much brighter area in front of you than where you are. And so if this is only metering off of directly where you are, to include rear facing, then your dot's going to get washed out, i.e. everything in front of you is too bright for the brightness of your dot. And that's not a good thing, especially if it turns out it's a shoot threat. So this actually meters kind of all around, which is really cool. And I can't really demonstrate it here, but if you walk in somewhere dark and you present the pistol, you can see the dot, you activate the light, and you can in fact see the dot change. Again, depends on how small of a space, how much light ends up splashing back, but pretty cool. This also comes with kind of a double-edged sword, that being you can't necessarily manually adjust this. At least this one, keep in mind, talking early, serial number 000002. Early model. And quick note on that also, this one has one reticle, i.e. a green dot. The newer ones have a dot within basically a circle, think EOTech, and you can switch back and forth between a dot within the circle, or just the circle. Either one. This one, just a dot. But on this model, and I'm pretty sure it holds true for the newer ones, there's a setting in which you can go back and forth between kind of a high and a low, but you can't turn this thing way, way down. Does that matter? Yes, but not really. There's two places where that kind of matters. One is if the way this meters, if it doesn't do a good job metering, so depending on lighting conditions, especially think being somewhere kind of dark and then illuminating something, so shooting from darkness into something bright. If this didn't do a good job, it would keep your dot really dim and it would be hard to make those shots. This does a good job, so kind of a non-issue. So the place I find it to be lacking, kind of outside of its use case, but shooting under night vision. Keeping in mind, you can absolutely shoot under night vision, but with this dot being, or the way it meters rather, it's just going to be really bright under nods. So if there's almost no ambient light and you're not shooting active, you don't have some sort of like IR illuminator on your gun, it's going to be really bright, especially if you don't have dual tubes where you can kind of compensate for that. Like your eye can, or your brain can put together the two pictures. If you're just looking through one tube, it's pretty bright looking through that one tube. So hard to shoot passive. Not made for that, it doesn't matter. This excels in what it was made for, which is just an everyday carry optic. Put this thing on your gun. You don't have to worry about changing batteries. You don't have to worry about adjusting settings, and it's just like set it and forget it, which is pretty cool. Where as much as I enjoy having a optic that you can crank down, especially down low for night vision settings, that also like onus comes on the person carrying it, because depending on lighting conditions, you will either have a dot that is potentially way too bright and a giant fireball, or, which isn't usually as big of a problem as having it turned down low to where if you present this, you can't even see the dot because last thing you were doing was shooting at night under low light or under night vision or whatever and forgot to adjust your dot. So this alleviates that, but it comes at the price of just one setting, like, well, technically two, kind of a high and low, but it'll basically meter and give you the appropriate brightness. One of my favorite things, honestly, about the PDP pistol is the serrations. They are pretty aggressive. And so that translates into really easy manipulation, whether your fingers like are numb, you can't feel them, you have gloves on, whatever it may be. And so they actually did something really cool with this in that they basically matched the serrations and the footprint of the PDP. Why is that important? Because of science and stuff. If you think about when a slide is milled for any optic, basically sits in there, and whether it's the plate or in this case the optic, you essentially have a recoil lug back here and up here. So that is captured, and it's captured with all of the violence when this slide reciprocates and cycles. But there are usually some sort of studs keeping from side to side movement, nowhere near as strong as forward to back. And lots of times you'll end up with pistols and consequently optics that actually sit wider than the frame. So if you go to manipulate up here, which is why honestly a lot of people got into the habit of manipulating pistols up front, because that alleviates grabbing, especially if your optic, you can adjust it somewhere in here, which this one, by the way, it's a tiny little recess button, like you have to use your fingernail to actually click it. But you would manipulate things up here because side to side motion, not very good for it. This actually, by the way of them using the serrations, allows you to grab the serrations and use them. And when you're doing that, you're actually putting force on the serrations to go ahead and run that slide, which is awesome because you're not putting undue force on the optic, potentially changing your zero or mashing buttons, any of that other stuff. Not that there's really buttons to mash on this one, but I think that's actually really cool. What has been my experience with the optic? Well, I've actually carried it on this pistol as everyday carry, carrying it every day, and shot it a bunch, whether it's just range sessions out at the range, going through different drills, things like that, and also ended up actually shooting this in a course. What are my thoughts overall? Honestly, I really like it. It works well. Like, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. I don't have to adjust settings. I don't have to worry about a battery, and also don't have to worry about accidentally grabbing it. I can manipulate the pistol back here rather than best practice if it's sticking out or something, manipulating it up here. And it continues to, like I said, just do a good job. Is there anything I don't care for about it? As I mentioned, I like the ability to manually adjust the brightness. This isn't that, which that's fine. The biggest issue I have with this is the issue I have, honestly, with most optics that still continue to get made. Some of them are finally addressing it. Just the fact that it's an open exposed emitter. Does this matter? It absolutely can, Does it matter for everyone? Not until it does, but it can. And so what I mean by that, if you're unfamiliar, basically there's a little emitter that sits down in here. It is in fact exposed, it's protected a little bit, and it projects the dot up onto that screen, onto the window. So when you present, you're seeing a dot that's projected up that way. It works until it doesn't. In that if you get water or something down here, which usually you're okay, you'll get a drop of water in there, it'll cover the emitter, and you'll present this, and you'll have however many dots you have, usually more than one. And usually what'll happen, bam, you break that shot, aiming at whichever one you choose, and boom, all that water, again, violently moving slide, goes out of there. You'll still have water on probably the front and the back of the lenses in there, but usually it'll kind of clear it out, and now you'll probably have one dot again, which is great. Who knows what you were aiming off of during that first shot where it was in fact obstructed. The other issue, like that kind of solves itself after hopefully one shot. The other issue is you get some sort of foreign debris that is not clear. Think mud, dirt, whatever inside there, and then you present the pistol and there is no dot. Like, it is gone. It can't pass through whatever debris you have in there. That basically kills it. Fortunately, this actually sits low enough to where you still have your irons, so hopefully you've been practicing with those, but it's something that's easily avoided in sealing this entire thing. And why isn't this sealed? Because of Trijicon and probably J-Point or whoever before them, because of the industry, really. What I mean by that is so many people have just copied the Trijicon footprint for like the RMR, and in doing so, where this mounts, it does not lend itself to putting bolts through the middle of something that's enclosed. So now you're looking at some sort of different footprint, which now more companies are starting to move to and be like, hey, we need a better way to mount this that will actually let us completely enclose this unit, so then it's a non-issue. Some people are like, that's silly, it's not an issue. Well, like I said, it's not an issue until it is. And as much as I love this, that would be amazing. Like, it would just take it to the next level. I haven't used any of the SCS models other than this very early generation for the PDP. Like I said, it's great, especially for the PDP. The footprint, the fact that you can use without accidentally manipulating or putting any pressure that you shouldn't put on your optic, that's awesome. And it does what it's supposed to do. Everyday carry optic that you can just put it on there and forget about it. Does its thing. And I think it's pretty cool. Price-wise, pretty affordable too. One, you're not having to get a optic plate, and which can be expensive. And I want to say street price, like MSRP's like a little over 400. Street price, I think you can get them around like 350 bucks, which is pretty cool. And if you have a PDP, something you're looking for, there'll be a link down below. You can go check it out. Also, with respect to PDPs, the 1.0, which is no longer being sold, this will not fit. You need a 2.0, which basically they changed a little bit of the geometry where the slide interfaces, or where optics would interface with the slide. This just works with your newer PDPs. But yeah, overall, pretty solid optic. And yeah, as always, thanks for joining us at kitbadger.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.